My name is Lucas. I'm 30 years old. Last autumn, I left my job in Seattle and moved back to Montana to take over my grandfather's old farmhouse. He'd passed away the previous year, and since I was his only grandchild, he willed the property to me. It sits just off a gravel road about 7 miles outside the town of Plains, surrounded by dense pine and fir forests that stretch for miles. I'd grown up visiting my grandparents here, but moving back permanently, alone, was something else entirely. The house itself is a 2-story wooden structure built in the 1940s with a sagging porch, creaky floors, and a rusty metal roof that drums in the rain. The winters are harsh, but I figured I could handle it. After all, I grew up camping and hunting with Grandpa. I thought the solitude would be peaceful. The first week went smoothly. I spent my evenings chopping wood by the back door and fixing up the old barn. I'd come inside, sit on the front porch with a cup of coffee, and watch the sun dip below the mountains. No cars, no sidewalks, just the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional howl of a coyote. By the end of the week, I was already feeling at home again. But on the 8th night, at exactly 1:02 a.m., everything changed. I'd crawled into bed early, feeling exhausted from stacking wood all day. The house was silent, save for the occasional tick of the old clock in the hallway. I was drifting off when I heard a muffled thump at the front door, like someone was knocking with a heavy glove. My heart jumped. I sat up, listened intently. Another thump. Slow, deliberate. It wasn't like the wind, it was too rhythmic, too precise. I threw off my covers and crept to the bedroom window. The porch light was off, and I didn't see anyone. I grabbed my flashlight and eased out of the room, making sure not to slam the door behind me. The old floorboards groaned underfoot. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard it again. Thump, 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 coming from right outside the front door. I froze. The farmhouse door has an old brass knob and a weathered wooden frame. There are only a couple of steps leading up to it. Whoever it was had to be standing in the dark just beyond the porch. I flicked on the porch light. Beam after beam of pale yellow illuminated the peeling paint and rotting steps, but no one stood there. The thumping had stopped. My breath felt loud in my ears. I fumbled with the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. I peeked through the peephole. Nothing but blackness. I raised my flashlight and swept the yard. Taxidermy deer head mounted near the door, my old pickup parked at a crooked angle, and the edge of the barn, where the moonlight barely reached. No footprints, no shadow of movement. I locked the deadbolt and retreated inside, shaking. I called my friend Mark, who lives in Plains, and told him what happened. He told me to keep my phone on and to stay inside. I spent the rest of the night with a .22 rifle across my lap, scanning the windows until dawn. Needless to say, I didn't sleep. Over the next 3 nights, the same thing happened, and always at precisely 1:02 a.m. On night 2, I heard the thumps, then a soft scraping at the back door, as if someone tried to pry it open. I bolted from my bed and rushed down the hall, but by the time I reached the kitchen, everything was silent again. I checked the back door. The wooden frame was splintered, like someone had wedged a stick in the latch, but nothing was missing, and no sign of anyone fleeing. On the 3rd night, while I sat in the living room watching the clock, I heard a low, guttural grunt outside, followed by the clicking of heavy boots on the front porch. I dashed for my rifle, slid the bolt back, and pressed my ear against the front door. A hand, soldier's gloved hand, rushed over the doorframe, then retreated. I opened the door a crack and yelled, "Who's there?" No reply, just the snap of boots fading into the darkness. By night 4, I was in full-on panic mode. I moved all my camping gear into the living room, set up a folding cot, and piled chairs under the doorknobs. I stayed awake until about 12:30 a.m., then loosened my grip on the rifle, nodding off for a few minutes. At exactly 1:02, I jolted awake to a loud thump against the barn door, then a dragging sound across the gravel driveway. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed outside, waving the beam toward the old oak tree at the far edge of the yard. There, I saw two glowing red dots, like eyes, staring at me. In that instant, a figure darted into the woods. It was human-shaped, hunched over, moving with an unnatural gait. I fired a single shot into the darkness, but I don't know if it hit anything. The eyes vanished between the trunks and branches, leaving only the cold night. The next morning, I found deep claw marks etched into the wooden boards of the barn door. They were too high up to be an animal, at least 6 feet off the ground. I called Sheriff Jenkins in Plains. He came out that afternoon and inspected the marks. He ran his hand over the jagged grooves and said quietly, "I've seen this before. Out near Cow Creek, years ago, folks said something was living out there, half man, half beast. We never figured it out. Your granddad mentioned it in passing once, but I thought he was joking. That shook me. Grandpa never liked to talk about the 58 and whatever that was. Sheriff Jenkins told me to keep a load of buckshot in the shotgun and to stay inside after dark. I did. For 2 nights there was nothing. No thumps, no scrapings, no red eyes glowing from the tree line. I thought maybe I'd been imagining things. But on the 5th night, at 1:02 a.m., the front door... That old door doesn't creak unless someone is pushing against it from the outside. I was waiting in the hallway, shotgun in hand. The door handle rattled as if someone was turning it slowly. My pulse pounded in my ears. I shouted, "Stop right there!" The rattling stopped. Then I felt a sudden gust of cold air brush past me, like someone had slipped inside. My flashlight beam swept to the living room, empty. I spun around. At the far end of the hallway, near the staircase, I saw it. A tall figure, at least 7 feet, hunched and clad in tattered clothing, black as the night itself. Its face was hidden under a hood, but I glimpsed pale, leathery skin stretched across sharp cheekbones. Before I could react, it turned its head toward me, revealing empty eye sockets, just black pits. I pulled the trigger and the shotgun. The blast echoed through the house, rattling windows. The figure staggered back, then dissolved into a plume of dark mist that seeped through the cracks in the floorboards and vanished. I don't know how to explain what I saw, but I know it was real. The next morning, Sheriff Jenkins and a deputy combed the property. No footprints, no blood. Just that same clawed mark on the barn and a shattered vent in the hallway. They advised me to leave and find another place to live. I sold the house to a neighboring rancher. He said he planned to burn it down this summer. I moved into a small apartment in Plains and haven't gone back since. I still wake up at random intervals in the middle of the night, my heart racing, convinced I hear claws scraping wood. Wherever that thing came from, it never wanted the house. They just wanted me out.